Hi, DoorDash for Ken.
Residents, but doing so is not required. Under provisions of the California Government Code, the City Council is prohibited from materially discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or an urgent need to take immediate action arose after posting the agenda. So I'd like to open for public comment. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Oh, I don't know. Okay.
We have no comment for us, but we do have.
Okay. Okay. So whoever would like to come up first,
I'm not sure if this is the right form. I work for the Augustine and Associate.
Give that mic to everybody. There you go.
My name is Terry O'Hara. I work with the Augustine and Associates on Main Street. And we received a letter regarding the sign. And we did come in and we spoke with Dana. And I have the letter with me, and then I did go ahead and print out the ordinance, our municipal code, I guess. It's because the sign is lit. It's a lit sign. But when we asked what could we do instead, and I don't want to complain that other people, other businesses have also illuminated signs, including next door. And sometimes it's left on because I work sometimes at 8 o'clock at night. It's left on all night. I know Vintage Market had 2 illuminated signs. So if it's the size, we want to comply, we want to bring, you know, happiness and business and everything to downtown. We don't want to be a problem, but we haven't been able to get an answer. And the response that I last got was given Erin's email, and maybe she would know. And then she didn't reply. So I thought maybe we just come. I think Councilmember Vice Mayor Sim came in and was speaking with Susan and said, we have a meeting. So you just kind of want to know, and I did take a picture so you can see our sign. It's not intrusive in any way, but it is lit. But we've actually had clients call us and say, well, you weren't open, your sign wasn't on. So we've had people go past us. And then we've had people that came in, one of our clients that owns, Marlene Glenn's, came in and said, I wasn't going to stop because your sign was on. Well, can't turn it on. So, so we have a sandwich board. But to me, that's more invasive and not as appealing as just our sign in the window. So we just kind of want to know, what can we do? Is it just the size of the sign? Is it the way it was illuminated? We just want some direction.
The council is prohibited from discussing it during public comment. And I would suggest to the mayor that this is a perfect matter to refer to the planning commission.
So should I leave a business card or something? Would that be the best thing to do? So
if you could give that to me. Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just make one statement, that property is part of the historic downtown and it has special buildings.
Planning commission.
I'll schedule a planning commission meeting.
So thank you for bringing this to our attention and coming tonight.
thank you.
It's appreciated. Mrs. Turner?
Good evening, I'm Judy Turner from Zippendale Ridge, and I have a couple items. So the first is from last meeting's agenda, January 12th, that I understand were removed. But I just want to make a comment about both of them should they come back on the agenda again. The first one is 7.1 of the January 12th agenda, which has to do with the acceptance of Zippendale Ridge Phase 3 Units 1, 2, and 3. And in particular to Unit 1, which has to do with the park itself, there was a tree that was removed that had a tag, assuming it's some kind of a precious tree, that died because of whatever was done with water and drainage. And that tree did get removed, but has not been replaced. The drainage has not been redone so that when another tree is planted, it won't die. And there is eroding of the walking trail that's by that same area where there is a pothole that has continued to get bigger. And again, there's erosion. So my question around that would be, when the city goes to accept this park, from the builder, will someone be going out and in particular taking a look at that before saying, yes, we approve it? And anything else that might be of a substantial consequence. The other item from the agenda from last meeting, which is 7.3, which has to do with the budget. So I know prior meetings, one in particular, August 11th of 2022, a proposed budget was put on there and then it was removed. Or I don't know if it got approved as it was so that you guys could do whatever it is you need to do. But it's my understanding a budget has not been officially approved. And I know I have requested, and a couple of my other fellow neighbors have requested a breakdown of some particular funds, which are the CFD funds or the ZFD funds, which are part of the budget, to understand where is our money at, how much have you gotten so far since it started in 2016, I believe. And if funds are being spent, what are they being spent on? It's our money, it's our taxes that we pay. And so this proposed budget that came out on January 12th still doesn't have that line out item written out in any way, shape, or form. So it's bundled somewhere, and we want to know. We feel it needs to be broken out. We've been asking for it, and we would like to be recognized that that will happen, that we can see that. And again, in general, regarding the budget, I think anything and everything that goes on an agenda to be approved forward, whether it's repairing something or needing something, I don't know how anybody can approve anything until you have the budget approved. You know what the heck's in the budget. So that's my comment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Could you turn the microphone off, please? Thank you.
Mayor Echo, can I address one of those?
Of course.
The CFD, I will have an item on the agenda for the next meeting that will address the CFD funds. I've been digging and digging into that since I've been here. That was an issue raised to me as soon as I was hired. And so I've been digging and digging, and I finally this week got some answers. So that will be on the next agenda, and there will be some accounting for it. So hopefully you'll have some satisfaction, at least on that issue next week. On the 9th. On the 9th.
I was going to also suggest, because these are continuing issues, that since we can't discuss them because it came up under public comment, I think it might be a really valuable idea to have a few liaisons from Zinfandel Ridge meet with the Public Works Director and the City Manager and address some of the concerns, and then it comes back on the agenda for the council to make any kinds of decisions.
I'd be happy to have a couple of liaisons meet with me before it comes back on the 9th. Mayor April, and maybe you could give me a couple of people to reach out to meet with.
Of course, be happy to. Any other public comments? I'm sorry, before you get started, can I ask, does Council Member McLaughlin, can he hear us? And
Madam Mayor, yes, I can now. I wasn't able to hear until you read the comment or the intro for public comment, but I can hear everything now. Thank you.
okay, great, thank you. Please go ahead.
My name's Lance Jaggers. Excuse me. I'm the managing partner of Plymouth Hospitality Partners. We own the Sierra Trading Post property up here on the corner on the roundabout. We have an application into the city to rezone the south half of the property to make it where we can move the gas station off the corner to the south half. I'm going to be working with the city manager to get the the item on your agenda as soon as possible. Look forward to working.
Thank you.
Again, I think that's an issue that goes directly with the planning commission before it comes to the council.
Any other comments on that? Okay. Any other public comments? Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to make a public comment? Joyce, does anybody have a hand raised? I can't see it from here.
No, actually.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody. Public comment is now closed. And moving forward, presentations, proclamations, and appointments. 4.1, council member appointments to regional boards and committees. And in our agenda packet, we have a list of the committees and boards that we participated in and that we need to continue to participate. So I think this is, I'd like to open this up for council discussion to see who is interested in what. And yeah.
Yes, I've been involved with the Amateur Transportation Commission, which is a commission that's over all the streets, and they also work hand in hand with Caltrans, because we have two freeway, two state routes through our county. Anyway, they meet once a month, and I would like to continue working with them. They've been very, very helpful, and us moving forward with this biking, walking trail that we have on Highway 49. Therefore, I'd like to continue to be on that committee. Thank you.
Keith can probably verify this, but for 3 years now, I've requested that Central Sierra Planning Council and Central Sierra Resource Conservation and Development Area Council be removed from this list because they no longer exist. So having me listed as appointments that don't exist isn't wonderful. I know it lists Mayor Ackerland as LAFCO, but I am also interested in any service to LAFCO. There is a rotation of cities, and I just don't know what that rotation is this year. We were supposed to be first in line last year. There's always one city of the 5 cities, one representative on LAFCO. So I'm interested in that, and it's not listed here, but City Manager Roberts and I were discussing if there were a committee that dealt with funding availability and our grant possibilities, then I would be very interested in serving on that. I have a little bit of expertise in that. Thank you.
Well, Councilmember Kleinfelter, if you would be willing to take over on LAFCO, I would be grateful. So everybody's okay with that?
I'd like to even make a comment to that. I think strong representation at LAFCO. Councilmember Kleinfelter would be perfect. Yes.
Thank you. Anything else jumping out at anybody? I'm looking at Amador County Council of Tourism, and I didn't participate much last year, so for a number of reasons. So I would like to give that up if somebody else is willing to give that a shot.
I'd like to.
Thank you. And then anything else jumping out at anybody? I'm looking at Amador Fire Protection Authority. And
Yeah.
it makes sense to
Madam-
me.
Sorry, yeah, I was just saying,
Oh,
Madam Mayor, I'd be interested in the Amador Fire Protection Authority and also the OES, the regional OES.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
I'd like to know more about his qualifications.
It's,
Joe, Mike, sorry.
were you still interested in doing the air quality control board position?
Yeah, and I see the importance of it. I would just definitely like to, I mean, that's definitely a position that I want. I just would like to know more of the, you know, what they are. And because it's kind of through COVID, they kind of just fell apart, I hate to say.
I think that's with a lot of the committees. The normal routine meeting dates did not happen for the last couple of years. I'm gonna make a suggestion to be expedite this, is that the council look through each of these and then submit comments to the city manager, and then it's formatted, and then the mayor will approve. It will be on the consent agenda for consideration next meeting. Is that?
I think that's a great idea. Everybody okay with that? Okay.
I think Frank's gonna jump in and say we still have to offer the public a moment to respond. I don't think they will, but.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item? The council member appointments to regional boards and committees. Any public comment? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the consent calendar items. And is there, all matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless or the city council votes on the motion to adopt. Members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar. Is there a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. We take our roll call vote.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Kleinfelder. Aye. Vice Mayor Sam.
Aye.
Mayor Ackerley.
Aye. Item 5.1, correspondence, there is none. Item 6, public hearings, there are none. Regular agenda items. Let's skip 7.1. 7.2 is to discuss the capital improvement plan items and provide direction. Staff report?
Of course. The staff put together just a short staff report on CIP to open up the discussion on capital improvement projects that need to be done. Council asked that we bring back items for the council to consider for a capital improvement plan. This is, like I said, just to get the conversation started. Capital improvement plan calls for public hearing, so this would obviously have to be noticed in the paper before we move forward with the capital improvement plan. Staff is recommending a 1 million gallon water tank to replace the current tank that we have that is half that size. To correct the spray field overflow problem at the wastewater treatment plant. And street repairs with Main Street, Empire Street, and Sutter Street being identified as the 3 priority streets in town that need to be repaired. And with the street repairs we would suggest if we're tearing up the streets, that we would do the infrastructure underneath so that we don't repair the street and then have a leak underneath and have to tear the street up. Regarding the water tank, the tank was built in 71, 72. And the last time we had a diver in the tank was May of 2020. And at that time, the tank was in good conditions with some area of the tanks categorized in fair condition. The bottom line of the recommendation at that time was that we needed to replace the gasket on the access hatch, which seems to be an easy, but we don't even know if that was done. We can't identify if that replacement was done. The bigger item that they said we needed to do was to schedule a blast and recoat the interior as soon as the budget allows. But within 3 years, if the recoating has not been completed, schedule a follow-up, clean, and inspect as recommended by the AWWA. As the council knows, we can't recoat the water tank on the inside because that's our only water supply. If we shut down the tank to do the inside of the tank, our citizens don't have water supply. I know I'd be upset if I didn't have water, as long as it took to do that. We are going to start moving in, there's 4 categories. There's excellent, good, fair, and poor. If you get to the poor, you're done. But really for us, if we fall into the fair category, we're starting to get into the you're done category. We really need to start looking for grants now because replacing that water tank is not going to be cheap. We have to find grants to do that. I've talked with AWA. They have on staff 2 people that all they do is look for grants. And I confirmed with them that we could use the service of those 2 people to look for us for grant. And because we're only asking them to look for one type of grant, we could use those services at a very minimal cost. And we could afford that. They even have the grant knowledge in the area of water that we could then look at the cost of what it would cost to have them do the application process, the grant administration, and that if we can't take that on for ourselves when the time comes. Of course, that would be a fee we would have to look at and look in the budget to see if we can afford that service. That would be a cost to the city. But hands down, that's our top priority. We can do all 3 of these things simultaneously if we can find the money to do them. They're all I'm gonna have Kathleen talk about the spray field in a second on what that will look like. The streets will also have to look for grant money to do the street projects. The council may have other projects that they think are important or more important that they want to bring into the loop that we can research and put into the mix. Like I said, these are just the top 3 that we found as important. You may have something that you feel is more important. This is just to get the conversation started. So I will ask Kathleen to talk about the spray field a little bit, and then we'll turn it over to council for questions and discussion, and we can answer your questions. Hopefully.
Okay. For those of you who aren't familiar with wastewater treatment plant, I hope you can follow along because it gets a little complex. So We have 3 ponds out there. And we have, I believe, 23 or 24 spray fields as well. The spray field closest to Old Sacramento Road is the spray field that we're talking about. That spray field has a retaining wall on the north side, which you can see from Old Sacramento Road. It is sufficient most of the time. It cannot handle 9 inches of rain in a few hours. And we had incredible storms. And we did have 9 inches of rain in a few hours at the wastewater treatment plant, December 31st, January 1st, right? It overwhelmed it. The important part of that is that we need to keep containment on that water. That water is not untreated water. It is treated then when it gets to the spray fields, but it still needs to be contained within our lands. So at this point, everything is fresh and new. We haven't had a chance to have any meetings with the engineers to see what we could possibly do to increase the volume of containment at that spray field. It's basically a low point, so you can understand that the water drainage comes down that way and it collects there. It's possible we might be able to do some diversion work higher up at the wastewater treatment plant to try to move the stormwater out of that area and drain it out somewhere else so it doesn't get mixed onto a spray field. We have a lot of consulting with engineers and operators to see exactly how we could do that. But we definitely need to address that so that the stormwater bypasses that spray field better. As well as we're trying to get the stormwater to bypass the ponds, which that would be really awful. And our staff was out there in the middle of the Saturday for hours and hours redirecting stormwater away from the ponds, so the ponds never did overflow. But you know, that was a lot of dedication and hard work in the middle of that horrible storm, digging new trenches and whatnot to move that water the other direction. So we really need to visit how we're going to contain that storm water and redirect it away from the areas we don't want it to be in. So that's basically the point we're at now. It was an incredibly huge storm for us. It's not typical out there, but we need to be prepared if we get another. And it's gonna have to be, you know, something that the engineers are definitely involved in and the operators are involved in to make it work on both ends. And I wish I could give you more details, but that is the main issue is moving that stormwater. The stormwater going out is not a concern, but once it mixes with anything else, then it becomes a concern. And if I could just make a couple of comments reflecting, Margaret did an awesome job explaining the water tank. Just a couple of details on that. So a modern day tank of the type we have, you would expect a 60 to 80 year lifespan on it. But that is a tank from late 60s, early 70s. So probably wouldn't get 80 years out of it. So Selby and I are both, you know, our best prediction that we could give you, because it's quite the thing to get inside. You can't just open the tank up. We have to hire a very specific company that has divers that go in and actually swim around in the tank and check things out, and it's amazing to watch, but it's quite the process, as you can imagine, because everything has to be sterile and whatnot to get in the tank. We're guesstimating that we probably have approximately 10 years of life left on that tank. It's 50 years old now. It's starting to have things happen interiorly. But like they suggested, they wanted to remove and replace the lining, but we really don't have a lot of luxury in that because we don't have another way to move water. But on the grading system, the 4 grades really reflect, you have 3 grades because you don't want to hit 4. 4 is insufficient, and that would cause the same problem as the tank completely having a disaster. But so when you get into excellent, good, fair, I mean, the tank has been good for a long time. The tank is now slowly moving to the fair area, which is the yellow light of the stop sign, so to speak. And we do need to address that before we get to the red light. So it's my understanding right now, there's a lot of water and wastewater grants out there. I think we really need to think about moving forward on that. And it's a project that's not going to happen overnight. So we got to take that into consideration. You don't want to, go to year 9 and then say, oh yeah, that's right, we think it's going to last 10 years. Because not only do you have the engineering and the construction, we're also going to have the state heavily involved in that because that's a major component of our drinking water system. So that will slow things down a little bit as well, because I want to be in every piece of that project. But I just kind of wanted to make it clear as to that tank we know is going to come to the end of its life. We're guessing 10 more years, but that's the best we can do unless divers come in there and tell us differently. Thank you.
Kathleen, you characterize it as a tank. We're talking about concrete structure, right? Underground structure. It's an actual tank.
No, you've not seen it. So if you head out on Main Street, Shenandoah, right? Off to your right, there's a water tank. It's a tank.
It's like a water tank.
It is an actual physical water tank. It's not on stilts or anything. It's 500,000 gallons.
Same as a water tank on the hill.
That is a water tank.
I'm talking about the holding tank down in. You're talking about the sewer plant, right? Oh,
No,
I'm
this
sorry.
is the water tank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the sewer one is the spray field containment.
You went spray fields to this, you lost me in between.
I'm sorry, I
The
just.
spray, I hate the spray fields, and the spray fields are coming out of a reservoir where you're putting you're processing the sewage. It's going into it.
Okay, so
Into a reservoir, and then you're spraying out the fields.
the final component to the process is spraying it into the fields.
Okay.
I'm sorry, there's 23 or 24 fields. There's a lot.
I missed the connection between the water tank.
There
and
was
the
not any, I'm sorry, my tie-in was just, I just wanted to make a comment about the water tank, because it is a concern. And
Oh, it's a big concern.
we need to keep that going. And the other sort of the concern is 500,000 gallons is not going to be enough water. If we have a wildfire here, it's going to be a real problem, because in the summer, during fair, I mean, we go through a lot of water in that tank. It's not, I mean, it's sufficient, but it's definitely not a lot extra during the peak high heat in the fair. So we definitely need to at least double, because we don't know when the Zinfandel water tank is gonna come on, it might not come on for years. We don't know, that's a big if, and even if it does, we still could use that other $500,000, I wish, 500,000 gallon storage for that. The other thought that, I mean, we'd have to look into it closer. We need the 1 million gallon storage. It might be better to do 2 500,000 gallon tanks. And then we would have the option of, if we needed to do work on one, we could leave the other one open. But that's part of our problem now too, is that we just one tank. You know, when you need to get in there and do something, I don't know if anybody here has been around this long, but we did have an incident before Valerie. Valerie's been along, Valerie and Keith have been around longer than me, but we did have an incident where somebody went up there and put the shotgun holes through the tank.
Yep.
And that was a little wild, and things happen. So maybe 2 500,000 gallon tanks might be the actual thought, but.
So I have a question on that thought. If we were to go with the million gallon tank, we have the 500,000 gallon tank, could that be repaired? I mean, it seems like the biggest, trickiest part of all this is making sure our citizens have water. Yeah, so we had, and I'm all about planning ahead. Plymouth's not gonna get any smaller, I don't think. So the 1 million gallon tank seems like that would be the ideal to go, but the 500,000 for a backup to that, you know, could it be repaired to where everything is safe in good or excellent standards?
Sense that. To repair the tank we have there.
Yeah.
That's $500,000 at least, to reline that tank, it's a lot of money. And that tank is a steel tank. Nobody builds steel water tanks anymore. They make them all out of freeze-stressed concrete, and they last 50, 60 years, and you'll have no problem with a new tank, new 1 million gallon tank. I don't think, I mean, it sounds like it might make sense to keep a spare wheel on the shelf, but to repair the tank that we have there now is gonna be a lot of money. And I think 1 million gallons is gonna be more than enough. We're doubling the size of the capacity of that tank. I think that's, it's not cheap. But these concrete tanks last a long time. I know about it because I deal with contractors who build them around the state. It's something that our tank is over 50 years old. That's a long time to keep that tank alive. It definitely is going to have to change, but going to have to build a tank next to the one we have, because as was pointed out a minute ago, we can't dump the water out there. It's going to have to hold the water until the new tank is completed, and then pump the water into it, and then probably demolish the old tank.
So then that's
Make sure your question was.
okay, but so then on the other end of that, if that's all the case, because I'm all about being preparedness, then if we had 2 500,000 gallon tanks, then if one needed to be worked on, you have the ability to provide our citizens still with water if you split it up. Right.
Yes, that's the idea. It comes down to cost analysis too. I don't know which would be more prudent. This is something that came up to Public Works just a few days ago, so it's not like heavy research has gone into our options with tanks. And without any money resource, it's going to be an expensive project. Just to answer your question, at this point, you could do the work on the tank that we have and gain some life. How much life? I don't know on recoding it, but the cost could be really big. So like I said, you really have to look at that from the perspective of how much money are you going to invest in something and how much time you're going to get back from it. And I have a feeling Councilmember Sims is probably on the right track, that, you know, it's like having the old car, it's only worth $1,000, you're gonna spend $3,000 to put new engine in it.
You can't recode because you can't dump the water, you'll have no water. You cannot recode. And if you build two 500,000 gallon tanks, you're gonna lose the economy of scale. It's gonna cost you half a gallon as much to build two as one big one.
That's very possibly true, like I said, we have not,
It's,
in a couple of days, researched all the ins and outs of this project. We were asked to prioritize what we thought was critical infrastructure. And as far as public works is concerned, that is our main concern, that something will happen with that tank and we will not be able to provide water to the citizens.
So, Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes, please.
So, I think there's a couple of factors for me, I think, that need to weigh in on this. Obviously, as Kathleen pointed out, this is something that's new on our radar in right sizing our tanks. And the best is, you know, there's firms out there that do this all the time that can tell us exactly what we need to do. One of the concerns that I have over the conversation that we have by increasing our capacity exponentially is we're planning for growth in the community, but potentially burdening our existing residents with the cost of that increase, as opposed to being able to defer that and incorporate that into impacts going forward. I'm not opposed to it. I just want to be able to put that onto the table for the point of conversation. I love the fact of grants and hope that we have the ability to secure it. And truly my hope is we'll develop a capital improvement plan that will keep us from finding ourselves in this position, you know, going forward. As you know, we need to be looking at deferred maintenance on everything in the city, from, you know, City Hall when asked if there's ever been a building inspection, you know, questions are raised or joked, or, you know, different stories and urban myths that I've heard in the past is, you know, we really need to get our arms around the totality of what we have before us, from deferred maintenance to replacement schedules to different things, to be able to really set ourselves up and plan. You know, I think that the items that have been brought up are emergent. I think we need to address them. We need to get the information. Grants are excellent, you know, but I'd be certainly concerned on vastly improving our water capacity on the backs of our existing residents, versus having growth pay for growth. Now, how can we get there without impacting our current residents? Well, frankly, I don't know that, but I think that's just an important factor that we need to consider as a council.
Can I make a comment to that? You know, we're not taking this lightly, and we do understand that grants, of course, are, you know, the ultimate goal. But we have had discussions about buy-ins from new development projects that might come in to buy in to pitch in for the water tank, because they will come in and they possibly may be large users, and they are definitely going to impact on that. So we have been thinking of ways that we could finance this without having, you know, huge impact on the general citizens. And you know, I feel that that's the way, not just for that particular improvement project, but for all of them.
Madam Mayor, please. I think we're getting a little bit buried in the nitty-gritty detail of this, and the agenda item is to agree and provide direction to staff whether these are the things that we want to pursue, and all of those other details come and when they're flushed out. That said, the water tank, and I really want to thank Councilmember McLaughlin for his comments regarding existing citizens bearing the cost. But on the other hand, I don't think our fire danger is going to get any less. And so I've been a proponent of redundancy in our water system for 25 years, an additional tank. There were times Councilmember Beck, God rest his soul, and I would go up 4 times a day during fair to see what the level of the water tank was, because there was a line on the side. I am grateful to staff for bringing this agenda item forward. I provided Margaret a link to, the League of California Cities have several cities capital improvement plans, most of them are 5-year plans. And it's good guidance, even though most of them are much larger than we are, it still provides a format that is good to see. I agree with each of these items, and I think that if they are fundable, the street repairs, we already are required to put 2% of our TOT into street repairs each year. And we have the SB1 funds. So those could all be listed in the capital improvement plan. The water tank is a community facility fundable through community facilities project under USDA rural development. That is a perfect match for them. So all of these are possible, and if the council agrees and the public agrees, and we still will have a public hearing, so things will be flushed out and changed along the way, then I think we can move along. So I think there is consensus that we agree with staff, these are important items.
At this time, thank you. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Nothing here. Anybody on Zoom? At this time. Okay, so we'll close that to public comment. Any additional information from staff that you want? Okay. So I think we're just looking for general direction, and I think there's a consensus to.
Yeah, I think we just move forward with the capital improvement plan.
And Madam Mayor, I'd say that, I mean, I absolutely know our staff is just strapped. You know, we need to get some capital improvement items before, and we absolutely need to be working on these projects. And I absolutely agree that these projects are priorities. I'm not trying to take that away. But I would say that a capital improvement plan needs to be much more robust and all-encompassing of all city infrastructure and all capital improvements that we need to do over 5 or 10, or really looking even further ahead, but at least starting off in the short term so that we can effectively plan. And so, you know, this is not something that can be done in a short meeting as a simple agenda item. And I know our staff are, you know, taxed in trying to address numerous fronts at one time. And so I'm not looking to put something on them. I certainly agree to these items in moving forward and getting them there. But I think for us, in terms of a capital improvement plan, I just want to be clear that these 3 items are not a capital improvement plan. These would be 3 items that we've identified as large priorities that need capital improvements, but we still have, you know, much more to look at as a city at whole, so we can fully get our arms around it and be able to, you know, prioritize as a council the things that we need to be, you know, I guess, paying attention to that we may not currently have on any of our radar.
Councilmember McLaughlin, I think that why the agenda item was put on here and some partial recommendations is because this is like the baby step, and there's a lot of steps to go before we have a finalized capital improvement plan. And all of your comments are well taken. I think I agree with you. Infrastructure is very important, and we're going to be playing catch up for a long time. It is hard to move forward when all of the money is trying to catch up with the deferred maintenance. So I think that a lot of these things are going to be flushed out over several meetings.
I guess then I just ask, what is our goal in this agenda item tonight? I guess just.
I'm hearing that our goal is to give staff direction to move forward on exploring further these 3 items. That's how I see it for tonight. But I think a further discussion at a later time, maybe to have it on the agenda. Maybe a capital improvement workshop or something.
Yeah.
Any other comments, Councilmember McLaughlin?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I open it.
Margaret, I guess
Go ahead.
the main thing is, I think you brought it to us to identify it more than else, right? Obviously, you're awfully busy right now, you don't need to go right into the trenches and find out all these things, but the idea is we need to identify it, and moving forward, as has been pointed out, we need to, as Councilman Kleinfeld says, it's a baby step, and they're all three very important.
I brought it forward to identify the three top things we thought were the top three capital improvements that needed to be done. To get the ball rolling, so that especially we could start looking for grants for the water tank. We will start making a list of all of the other capital improvements that we see that need to be done. And at some point, we'll be asking for a workshop on capital improvements so we can begin a true capital improvement plan. That's my thought process.
Anything else from anybody? Okay. All right, item 7.3, discussion on if the council would like to continue Zoom meetings after AB 361 expires. And if we could have a staff report on that.
Councilmember Kleinfelder asked for this to come to council. And before I turn it over to the council, I would just like to make a couple comments that in your consideration and in your discussion, I would just like you to consider that to continue with Zoom meetings, there is a cost associated with that in terms of overtime of staff to operate the Zoom. And if you're going to continue, I would suggest expending a little bit of funds for a better system so that the quality of the recording is a little bit better and the audio is a little bit better. Sometimes it cuts in and out. And if you decide not to go and continue with Zoom, I would recommend that we continue with recording the meetings for historical purposes as we do action minutes. And so someone may want to watch the meetings after the fact to see what a council member said about an item, because that's not captured in action minutes. And so the video recording would tell them what a council member's viewpoint was on a specific item. And with that, I'll turn it over to the council.
I would like to open this to public comment first. Is there any public comment on this agenda item?
This is our Zoom girl.
Hi, thank you. Judy Turner, Citadel Ridge. I know I oftentimes with business or doing other things with family members takes me out of town on meeting nights, but I still have the ability to call in on a Zoom meeting and participate. And I am a participating member of Plymouth, and I want to continue to be that and will be doing that. And feel I have a better opportunity of doing that, seeing, understanding, hearing the moods and facial expressions when I am on the Zoom meeting, if I can't be here in person. The other is if anybody does present anything that's on the screen or whatever the case may be, I have the ability to see it. So for me, as an active member and participant of being a Plymouth citizen, these Zoom meetings are very, very important to me to be able to continue to participate.
Thank you. Any other public comments here? Go ahead, Ronnie.
So my name is Marie Hurlick, and I'm also member of the community, and I also use Zoom. And I think it's important to remember not everybody come to a meeting. We have residents that are elderly, maybe don't drive at night. So almost everybody has a computer these days or a phone. So I encourage you to continue. All I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Any public comments on Zoom?
I don't see anything.
Okay, council discussion?
I think that our society has gotten used to this as a format. Remote meetings weren't allowed for public agencies before COVID. So it's been a luxury that has turned into the norm. And I think not only members of governing bodies, but the public have expected now. I think it makes sense for us to continue.
I totally agree. My question for Frank, which was not here.
He's on Zoom.
He's on Zoom.
Oh, it is, if council members Zoom are they able to vote from outside of council, Frank?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to make a point of clarification. The reason why this is before the council is because as of February 28th, the governor's emergency order goes away, and therefore AB 361 goes away. In other words, the council will not have the ability, outside of some exceptional circumstances, to appear remotely. So really this question and this item is for the council as it relates to, do you still want to keep the video conference option for the public? Because there is some new legislation that will allow teleconferencing for council members, but it's not going to be nearly as simple or as flexible as AB 361. You're going to have two sets of rules. You're going to have the old teleconference rules where you have to post your location, and then but then you also have some new rules under new legislation that will allow a council member to appear remotely under specified conditions and assuming they get the consent of their colleagues, and some other stipulations apply. But overall, it's not going to be, the point is it's not going to be as easy and seamless as it is now after February 28th for the council members themselves to appear. So this question really is about, do you want to extend that as a courtesy to the public, even though by and large, you as a council will have to be there in person?
Frank, I was going to make the point about the remote meetings previously and having the address of each person if they were unable to be at the meeting listed on the agenda. I was a chair of a board that was regional board that took 6 hours to drive to some places, but we listed each location of a member and were able to function. So could you address that a bit if that applies?
Yeah, so that still will apply. Those are the old, remember 2019 when COVID didn't exist? So that was the old, those are the old rules back in the day that council member just described. And basically you have to post the location, the address, and you have to allow public comment wherever you are. And you still have to have a quorum of the council members at the actual council chambers. So you can only have maybe one or two that were calling in. That was, again, pre-COVID, pre-AB 361. That's still on the table. And it was, in my experience, is a pretty onerous requirement. And so most cities just, if a council member couldn't be there, they just didn't attend, because oftentimes if they're on vacation or they're visiting family or other things, it was too difficult to post a location, in the middle of wherever they were. So that typically wasn't used. The new option under AB 2449 does allow a little bit more flexibility, but you have to have very specified conditions, and you have to get the full council's consent prior to the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, whether they'll let you appear or not. And again, and you can only use those reasons. I was going to call them excuses, but you can only use those reasons a few times a year. So again, it's going to be, you have some flexibility, but not a lot of flexibility after February 28th. So by and large, you're going to want to assume you'll probably want to be here most of the time. And if you can't be here, let us know. We'll let you know specifically what your options are to appear remotely, and you can decide if it's worth it or not. But that's, so again, this question is really about, do you want to maintain that option to the public as a courtesy?
Thank you. In my opinion, I think keeping the option for the public, because what's on the agenda is just whether we want to continue with it or not. So I think we can flesh out what we could do later. But even if it was just for the public, I think it's of value to the community.
Councilmember White?
Yes, since I was the lucky one who got to handle all this as mayor when all this technology came along, and to see leaps and bounds that we went through it. You've seen some of the stuff we had tied up in this office at some points. It was pretty microphones hanging. It was pretty crazy. I just think it's the future. It's where we're going. I do believe, as we can see, we have two of our famous constituents right here. I believe in the option so much for them to be able to watch the meetings. And to be real honest, I don't know how many meetings I watched as a citizen, just someone who's watching on the outside. I don't know how many times I'll have a free half an hour in my day, and I'll say, hey, I'm watching board supervisors meetings, see what's going on. I kind of wish more of the public would do that. So I'm all for it. I don't know about, and there's got to be new technology coming along all the ways about improving the sound and improving the video quality. I will say that a lot of that has to do with your internet service, and as far as Amber County goes, we have the best internet service that you can get in this area as far as it goes. So I don't know if there's even any improvement on that part of it.
And I agree with what everybody's saying, that I think Zoom is the way to go, and it's a benefit to the members of the community who, for one reason or another, aren't able to make it in person. And I think it just encourages participation, and I'm all for it.
That's council direction to staff.
I'm sorry, Councilmember McLaughlin.
Yeah, I don't need to rebeat the drum. I think, council collectively is phrased it well, that I think it's here. Technology is here to stay. And now we just need to make the investment to make the technology work a little bit better for us. But yeah, I fully support continuing and providing this option for community engagement.
So I think the consensus is to continue with Zoom meetings. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, item 8, council staff communications, and 8.1 city managers report.
I have a long tonight. I apologize in advance.
That's okay. That just shows you've been busy.
So my first item is Zinfandel CFD, which I spoke about earlier. I received the annual fiscal year report on the CFD done by MBS. I received the current year's report this week. I looked up last year's report, but I received the current year's report after I met with you this week. I received the current year's report. So that was enlightening. And I requested our interim finance director for the expenditures, and she was able to turn that around in a day. So I have the expenditures as well now. So that's what I'm putting together for next council meeting. ACES has requested to open up their contract for negotiations, and the last time the contract was open was 2021. And Frank, you'll have to correct me if I can't ask this question. I need to know if the council would like this item brought forward for discussion to open the contract. Can I ask that question, Frank?
Open what contract again? I couldn't hear that. What specific contract?
ACES?
You can always ask for that, you can ask them now, and if a council member wants to make that a request as part of the future agenda item, they can do it in about a minute.
They want to open up their contract, and there's no increase the first year, but there are increases each future year after. Is there an interest for me to bring that forward?
So why don't,
I think so.
Yeah, and I'd recommend, just present your report, and then if council members want to instruct staff to bring that forward, they can do it during their future agenda item request.
Okay. I was previously asked about the sewer bonds and when they sunset by Councilmember McLaughlin. One bond sunsets September 2028 and the other sunsets September of 2029. Next meeting is a large agenda. I just wanted to give you a heads up tonight. This afternoon we had some flooding on Mill Street due to a resident emptying out their basement of water. We did call the contractor back into town. They had gone to Ione. He did come back into town. He cleaned up the street, and that I'll be doing a walkthrough on Mill Street in the morning because there was water going underneath the roadway and bubbling up in the middle of the street. So I'm going to do a walkthrough with Selby in the morning to see if there's damage to the street in the morning. And I just wanted to let the public know that we are issuing burn permits under the emergency order. We just need to know, they just need to know that they have to comply with the county air quality regulations. And that's my report.
I have a favor to ask for members of the public who have been interested in the subject. As far as the ZRCFD, you refer to an annual report provided by NBS. Would you just explain a little bit about what that is for people who might not know?
They take an accounting of all the money that's taken in by the CFD, by the facilities district, and they account for what comes in and what goes out. They just don't account for each amount of exactly where it's expended to. So that's where our accounting system comes into play of where exactly the expenditures are paid to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathleen?
May I just make a comment about that? I think it might be helpful if maybe we could find a place on our website that we could just post those NBS reports for every year.
Well, not at the moment because we're having issues with our website. Once we get that worked out, we will find a place that we can put them on.
Great, thank you. Any other council member reports or requests for future agenda items? Councilmember Kleinfelder?
I wanted to start by thanking our staff, all of our staff, because the stress of the storms was enormous for a small community, and they really stepped up. So it's been a busy week, but not that much for the city for me. And I do have some future agenda items, but I will email Manager Roberts or go through the process that we put on the website.
Councilmember White?
I'm good.
Councilmember McLaughlin.
No, I just,
You'd like to report on or request for future agenda items?
I too would just like to do a shout out to our city staff for the work that they've done. You know, shorthanded and Mother Nature certainly didn't cooperate, and just certainly just a job well done.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Sim?
I have some items as well, but I will also email mine into city manager.
And I don't have any comments except for to echo what has been already, what's already been said, that just to all staff, thank you for working so hard, and I feel like progress is being made on some things, and I think that's really exciting. I have, at this time, I don't have any requests for future agenda items.
Can I just ask one question on adding items to a future agenda? I thought that was something that we do, at least from the dais publicly. I'm not familiar with the email. Forgive me for my ignorance. I'm just trying to understand the process just for transparency in terms of what we're, as a counselor, directing staff to do and add for future.
Margaret, do you want to address that? Or Councilman?
What we're doing is, if we have a suggestion or a request for a future agenda item, or if something comes up after a meeting that we think is important to be addressed, we can email the city manager, or on our website, if it's working, is a process for submitting requests for the agenda by council.
And did that answer that?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, yeah. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Actually, I do have a couple of things that I'd like to request for future agenda items. Opening the basis contract for discussion, like we talked about earlier, and then I would like to see in the future, and I know that we have talked about this, just a city council workshop on how we interact, how we, as a council, how we conduct business, and that sort of thing.
We could even consider having a facilitator that is an expert in doing those types of things, working relationships and what are roles and goals and objectives.
Mm-hmm.
They're not cheap though.
Okay, otherwise, I think that's it. Oh, Councilmember White.
Sorry, we keep on and it pops in your head. And it's more for Frank and everyone. Hawksview.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm off the hook tonight.
Okay, so the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.